the first day of the NFL Combine, and the Falcons dropped a little bit of a news bomb on us, and that is they are releasing tight end Jonnu Smith. Adam Schefter, the first one to report it. So we're going to react to this news, break it down, run through the cap savings for Atlanta, and what this means for the Falcons moving forward, and whether or not this could be a tiny little string that connects another piece of string and another and another and another to who the Falcons quarterback is going to be. Because with this move, you've got $6.5 million in cap savings. And Jonnu Smith was productive last year. He was actually one of the biggest playmakers on this Falcons offense. So you can look at this in a handful of ways, right? Jonnu Smith was ultimately a player that Arthur Smith traded for because the two overlapped in Tennessee. And it was a good trade. I mean, for what they got out of him compared to what New England was doing with him, the Falcons definitely got some of the best play out of Jonnu Smith in a tight end 2 type of role. But with Arthur Smith gone, Raheem Morris comes in, and he doesn't look at Jonnu Smith as maybe one of his guys, if you will. And that $6.5 million in cap savings is just very enticing for maybe a head coach that wants to swing big in free agency, or for a quarterback like, I don't know, Kirk Cousins, who could run you a big bill. We're going to break this down in more detail in just a moment, but this is why you subscribe, okay? You know how in Game of Thrones winter is coming? Well, in the NFL, it's free agency is coming, and we've already got some news coming out like today. So help us reach 20,000 subscribers. We cover all things Atlanta Falcons here. We have both Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris's entire NFL Combine press conference already up on the channel from this morning. So if you are looking for a one-stop shop for your favorite team, hit the subscribe button down below. To me, though, this move really comes down to dollars and cents. I mean, there was a $9 million cap hit for Jonnu Smith. There was no way he was going to stay on the books for that number. He was either getting released or he was going to agree to a pay cut. Ultimately, Atlanta decides to just move on from him outright and get $6.5 million in cap savings. And like I said earlier, this was clearly an Arthur Smith guy, and with Arthur Smith gone, I'm not blown away by this. So now we kind of turn the page to, all right, you moved on from Jonnu Smith. It's not like you have a major production void you have to fill. He did some good things last year for Atlanta, but you're not moving on from one of your star players, if you will. So what do you plan to do with that $6.5 million? Did you want to move on from him just because you didn't feel like he'd be a good fit in this offense? Or you have bigger plans in free agency that you wanted to free up cap space for? We're going to find out over the next few weeks. I don't think a releasing of Jonnu Smith should automatically equal they're signing Kirk Cousins now. They just freed up cap space to go do that. I do think it gives them flexibility, though. And listening to Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, easy, Matthew. Listening to Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris today during their press conferences, they sounded like a pair of gentlemen that want to have flexibility. Whether it's the draft, free agency, or trade, they are leaving all their options open for finding the next Falcons quarterback. And adding $6.5 million to the pot definitely makes 2 of those 3 paths a lot more easier to navigate. So I don't think anyone should look at this and think it's a foregone conclusion that with additional cap space, now Atlanta can make a run for Kirk Cousins. They could, but it could also just mean they didn't want to have a $9 million tight end on their books that's not even the starter. But do you agree with the move to release Jonnu Smith? $6.5 million in cap savings is a good chunk of change. That's not a small amount of money, but he was really good for Atlanta. I mean, we looked at his numbers. I mean, compare what he did in 2023 really quickly to his first 2 years in New England. I mean, he had more than double the amount of yards he had in those 2 years combined. 3 touchdowns compared to just 1 with the Patriots. So I think Jonnu Smith still has some really good football left in him. And he's going to find a home somewhere else. It's likely not going to be Atlanta. But when we look at the Falcons tight end depth chart now, it's got Michael Pruitt and John Fitzpatrick as your backups. There are going to be some additions made to this tight end room because I don't even know if Raheem Morris can confidently say Kyle Pitts is a tight end that can play all 17 games and play upwards of 80% of the snaps on offense. So there is definitely going to be some level of addition to replace Jonnu Smith on this tight end room here. And I think it's a sneaky need for Atlanta. I don't know if it's so sneaky that they target it early in the draft or if they just kind of play it safe and find a veteran free agent that's half the price of Jonnu Smith for 75% of the production, and they call it a day, and they put the cap savings towards other spending areas for position units on their roster. But tight end is definitely a bit of a sneaky one, because if Kyle Pitts were to go down, all of a sudden Atlanta has really no tight ends with experience. Michael Pruitt's a free agent, so remains to be seen if they even bring him back. We're going to talk more about the salary cap and what this means and the updated cap space for Atlanta in just a moment. But first, I do want to share with you guys some awesome information about our sponsor today, which is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy, and it is the #1 daily fantasy sports service in North America. What I love about PrizePicks is you pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, that's a lot of big jargon right there. What does that mean in English? Well, we can break this down for you, because what you do on PrizePicks is you select 2 to 6 players and then take baseball, for example. As a big seam head fan myself, I am rolling with these selections for the 2024 MLB season. I like the more on Mookie Betts at 32.5, and I like the less on Manny Machado, because I just am not a big Padres believer for this season. So if you like my selections, come feel free to ride with me. If you don't like them, no worries. You can always fade me. But one thing about PrizePicks that you're definitely going to love is the injury insurance that they offer, so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you for the rest, and the rest of your entry stays alive. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy at PrizePicks. Now, who remembers the video I put out over the weekend about 5 cut candidates for the Falcons? And number 2 on my list was Jonnu Smith, right after Taylor Heinicke and before Lorenzo Carter. So, don't want to say I told you guys so, and a lot of people in the comment section laughed at me for thinking of Jonnu Smith being a cut candidate, but fast forward a few days later, and here we are. The updated cap space for Atlanta now sits around $40 million. You get $6.5 million from releasing Jonnu Smith, and then an additional $13-ish million based on what the projected salary cap was supposed to be, which was $242 million versus what it actually was, $255.4 million. So you take that 13 extra million that maybe you didn't account for necessarily, plus $6.5 million from Jonnu Smith, and you've got yourself, nearly $20 million in cap savings just like that. And with $40 million, you can go out and get a handful of really good, impactful starters. So, like we said, Jonnu Smith, the releasing numbers, they look like this. For the other guys on that cut candidates video we put out, Taylor Heinicke, if you move on from QB2, QB1, I don't know what he is. It's QB depressing. It's $6.5 million in cap savings. We talked about Jonnu Smith already. Lorenzo Carter, if you move on from him, $3.7 million in cap savings. And the dead cap is what you're paying guys that aren't on your roster. So you want to keep that number obviously low. If you don't keep up with the salary cap, I don't blame you. It's very difficult and it's kind of a myth. But if you remember Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, they had big dead cap hits because they were players not on the Falcons roster that were being included in the Falcons salary cap budget. And then Mike Hughes, another guy we talked about just a moment ago, $3 million in cap savings if you move on from the former first-round pick. So, who do you think is the next player to get released? I'm going to go with Taylor Heinicke. There's just no way he's on this team. The amount of shit-talking, if we're being honest, that Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot have done about the quarterback play last year, they have not been shy with their words. Raheem Morris, speaking to the media today, said, if there was better quarterback play in Atlanta last year, I probably wouldn't have this job right now. I mean, he was just being honest that Arthur Smith lost his job because the quarterback sucked in 2023, and he was brought in to change that. So we'll wait and see, but it's not going to be Taylor Heinicke under center, and he's not going to be on this roster, especially with that cap hit versus the cap savings. All right, that will do it for us. Our third video of the day. That might be, no, not a channel record. I think the draft, we might have had even 4 one day, but it may tie a record. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. I really appreciate those of you that tune in and watch all the way to the end of the video. If you're part of the end of the video crew, scroll on down, type ATL in the comment section.